All right, welcome in. Here we go. Hour number 2 of the show and hour number 1 of the second week of our Cougar segment, brought to you by No Lie Brewing, along with a couple other great sponsors, all involving financial, money, mortgages, things that I don't quite understand. That's why I have Mkristo here for the mortgages, and the financial guy is Jed Collins. It's our own little Brady Bunch. And Kevin, you have to post this video today because the four of us are sitting here: Ian Furness, Jed Collins, Mkristo Bruce, Alex Brink. 3 Cougar legends and a guy that just drank a lot of beer there for 4 years. So, all right, here we go. Guys, welcome. I'll start with our quarterback, Alex Brink. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, and Mkristo looking good as always, fit and trim, ready to get that call to go back to the NFL any day now, it looks like.
Hey, I'm riding high on this Coug win. No one's going to shake me right now.
And Jed Collins with books in the background for those watching on video. Huh? That doesn't make you smarter, fella, but unfortunately we know you're the smart guy here. So
it's osmosis, and I'm actually at my father's house, my mom and dad's house, so that's his books. I don't read any of those. So if you question some of the titles, that's leave those in the comments.
That's a fake background. Those are not real books.
Oh, this is not a tenth of his library. This is nothing.
It's not a green screen then. Okay, I got you. Well, I was told when I went to college, if I put a book underneath my pillow, it would just like ooze into my. Didn't work. All right, let's go. Let's start week 1. And Alex, I'm going to start with you. We kind of speculated it would be Jaden DeLora last week, be the starting quarterback, and that's indeed. And I think by the time we ended up going on the air that day, it was announced. True freshman quarterback. I remember your start as a redshirt freshman quarterback in that same stadium, and you'd been in the program for a year. And, I mean, that's a hard thing. Now, there were no fans, but still it looked initially like the first series or two, like I don't want to say he looked nervous, but, I mean, it's a whole different deal. But, boy, all it took is one scramble for a first down, and after that, Alex, that kid looked special.
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, like you said, the first series or two had to get his feet underneath him, which is to be expected, right? A young guy, first snaps since playing his senior year in high school over on the island. And, he ends up, for all intents and purposes, he played a phenomenal game. Even the interception, he took a shot, felt like he had a chance, left the ball a little underthrown. I'll take an aggressive play like that from a young quarterback all day. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him. He used his legs. He, like you said, he showed great leadership, great poise. And, when he had to, he made big throws. And now it helps when you have a running game like Washington State had, which we haven't seen in a long time, and Deion McIntosh. But, from my perspective, Jaden DeLora looks like he could be the next special one at Washington State.
And Crystal, let me go to you. I mean, Alex touched on the running game. We'll get more to the running game in a second, but just the quarterback himself. I mean, you're a defensive guy. Usually you're bred not to like those guys, but you have to love what you saw with number 4.
You know what's crazy is I think dude threw all fastballs. He was just all gas on every ball he threw. I was like, I don't know if that was nerves or what, but he was digging deep in the well and just hucking them. And I was like, if that kid gets a little bit of touch, he's going to be dangerous for sure.
I got to throw my my Max Borghi flag on Alex for a second. He's already looking like the next special. Let's give him a few. Let's get some under the belt.
Fair enough.
You came out, and I think one thing we can take away for sure from this one game is that leadership presence. Alex mentioned it. That first down scramble, to me, said more than anything was, I'm a gamer. I'm a winner. Whether it's going my way or not, I'm going to go get the job done. And being on the road, as you said, against a Pac-12 opponent, having a new coach, new system, having your dogs out, having Max Borghi out, everybody kind of looked at each other and said, this thing could go south really quickly. And to have a young man fresh out of high school be able to step up to that kind of plate and take reps, I love Alex's call out, because I think as much as a fullback tight end knows about the system, I think that's how the system works, is by taking those shots and taking those chances. And it's something that Washington State quarterbacks need to be able to be confident in doing, is not having the fear of failure, fear of throwing an interception. Let her fly, let your receivers make plays, because we got some talented guys on the outside.
Hey, by the way, Mkristo, let me just throw this at you and then I'll let you jump in. I just got to give Mkristo a little bit of our 101 on how we do this.
Oh, yeah.
See, now, you heard what would be tempered enthusiasm for the quarterback. Normally, it's the quarterback's fault for one of us on this call. Sure. Okay. So just so you know, Mkristo, like the kid looks sensational. Everyone's excited about the next 4 years.
Pause.
But one guy is always going to put the brakes on the quarterback. Now, if something does go south, say the defense gives up 50 points, it will be number 4's fault. And Chris, I just want you to know how this operates on this call.
Well, he
right?
should score one more point, right? It's never the defense's fault for sure. But one thing I was going to say is, historically, we always get that little feeling like the UCLA game. If there's any adversity, people always say, "Oh, getting ready to Cougar." You guys can't. You guys got to admit you had a little pit in your stomach when they started to get a little traction there. But to be a high school senior, to step onto a Pac-12 field and lead a team, and not, whenever the adversity is going back and forth, that's a lot of trouble right there. So more props to him.
Alex, the running game too. I mean, no Max Borghi. Every one of us probably thought the same thing. Like, here we go. And I think, guys, Alex, you probably had a hint of it. I'd heard a little bit that he was going to be out and earlier in the week, but you kind of keep it under wraps, and then all of a sudden he comes out. Alex, I felt okay. I'm crazy. I'm nuts. I know that, but we saw glimpses of McIntosh last season. The drop off is significant. Max Borghi's a Sunday player, but boy, McIntosh and that line, Alex, they were something else.
Well, I think, to be fair to Max, he might have rushed for 250 against that Oregon State, defensive line if he was out there. And that's no shade to Dion, because Dion had a really nice night. And, the Cougar offensive line, which I think is the strength of this offense, played phenomenal. I mean, the right side, Josh Watson and Abe Lucas were dominant. I really liked, what I saw from the center, Brian Green. I thought he did a nice job, and so Dion, I mean, there was a couple of times he's run through holes that you could drive a Mack truck through. But to him also, he broke some tackles. He ran really hard. And, let's be really honest. The run and shoot is a better fit for Dion McIntosh than the air raid was. He runs downhill. He's not catching the ball on the flat. He's not doing all these things. It's pistol, downhill run, and that fits him really well. Look, that kid was recruited to Notre Dame, like a good Notre Dame program. So he's a talented football player.
Played there. Yeah, he played. I mean, he played there. Jed, the running of the football, and then just the playmakers. Jed, there was a lot made in the offseason about guys leaving. I mean, Cassidy Woods, who had like 0 catches ever, and people freaked out about him, and the kid from I forget what the kid's name is now, from Spokane, a couple of receivers leaving. The one thing I do know is this: they recruited enough receivers every year in the air raid. There's still playmakers there. Borghi out aside, you got McIntosh. They still have playmakers. Heck, we saw that with Harris. I mean, they still have dudes that can go make plays, Jed.
Yeah, I was going to bring that play up. And Mkristo said, they started to make this run. You started to get it feeling. And then Travell Harris, takes a 30-yard run to the house, really just breaking open the game. I don't think enough could be said about McIntosh stepping up. Really impressive, as Alex just referenced, more of a downhill runner. You saw him at 5 yards before you even knew or felt the play develop. He was hitting the hole. He was hitting it strong. But what more impressed me with him was his blitz pickup. You notice the offensive line. I don't think we're going to understate them all season. Abe Lucas, definitely a first day kind of NFL player. Their ability to pull in the run game, but also in the communication. For having a true freshman, you didn't see many blitzes go unpicked up. That is a tribute to the offensive line. That's the center speaking it out. That's the quarterback being poised. But it's also your running back stepping up and bringing on some of those safeties and linebackers coming free. That was one of the most impressive things to me about Saturday night, was that communication and that comfortability, not to mention the smiles and the camaraderie on the sideline.
MK, I want you to jump in here to wrap up this first segment, and then we're going to get into the defense and what they have coming next week against the Ducks, or this week against the Ducks. MK, I know this because I was at that same game. You saw Abe Lucas's last high school football game. I don't want to bring up bad memories for Liberty High School and our buddy Steve Valek, but you saw he was a grown man that day. Abe Lucas, Jed mentioned it, first day pick. He is really something else on that right side. I mean, I'm just so blown away by how much how good this kid is. He is really special. He's going to be a big time player for this team this year.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. If we actually let our quarterback sit back, sit in the pocket, pick people off. I don't know if you guys are thinking that, our young freshman quarterback looks a little bit like Tua back there, but he was absolutely rolling. So it's all going to come down to protection, like you said, with gaps too. I'm excited to see what Max Borghi does behind this line, honestly.
All right, let's do this, guys. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the defense. Boy, I think we mentioned it last week, 4-3, maybe a better fit scheme, linebacker stepping up. I mean, we got a break because actually a call didn't go against us in the end. We didn't lose a starting linebacker when it was all said and done to a penalty. And boy, those guys played really well, and especially without some key guys in that secondary. Let's look ahead to the Duck game this coming week. And Mkristo Bruce, Alex Brink, Jed Collins, our Cougar segment brought to you by No Lie Brewing and a couple others who we'll hear from in a second on 950 KJR. All right, welcome back in segment 2. Here we go. Cougs, talking Cougs and Ducks this week. This is, by the way, the one week that the Huskies are fans of the Cougs. This is like their second biggest game of the week would be Wazoo taking on Oregon. That's the hate level here in Seattle. At Mkristo, you know that. So does Jed. It reigns supreme. So let me, Mkristo, tell us real quick about Guild Mortgage and what you got going on these days.
Yeah. So I run a mortgage team with Guild Mortgage over here in Washington. We service all of Washington. So any kind of mortgage, refinance, buying a home, refinancing your home, we're the only team for you. So if you're looking for a mortgage, call Team Bruce.
And then the website is?
www.teambrucemortgage.com.
All right. If you're a Coug out there, this is one place to go get that mortgage from. It's MK, and he'll talk Cougar football with you, too, in the process. And, Jed, to make sure you got enough cash money to go see Mkristo. You can't talk to Mkristo if you don't have anything in your back pocket. What can people do?
It's definitely the lead into those kind of decisions. So yourmoneyvehicle.com. If you know a high school or a college student looking for a certification in financial literacy, yourmoneyvehicle.com is going to ask, answer, and give you the actions to begin your financial plan. So yourmoneyvehicle.com is where you can check out that virtual on-demand course. And yes, it is a certification course.
I love it. Great stuff, guys. Alex, let me start with you. I mean, I know you prep all week for a game. All of a sudden you get there in your chart and you're too deep is like, where are these guys? After the game, unsolicited, and we'll get this out of the way. Nick Rolovich said, hey, we're missing 32 guys. The panic sets in. Boy, the Cougs have this outbreak of COVID-19, and why is he saying that? And then he wouldn't answer the question, the follow-up, because I give you 4 storylines and all those things. I'll throw an opinion there, but he's got to be better at that. And this isn't Hawaii. This is a bigger market because it's not just Pullman, it's Spokane, it's Washington, it's the Northwest, it's the Pac-12. I hope that Pat Chun, Bill Stevens help him along the way. He's too good a coach for this program. He's too good a face for this program. Don't sully that at all with, I know you want to hide if there's injuries, but the COVID thing you can't hide behind. Just say no. We had one guy, and we found out yesterday there's one active case. That said, the one active case, that player is back today. So it sounds like they're doing good in the COVID sense. They were missing some guys with injuries, with practice closed, and this is the way it is across the country. Every coach can hide and say, hey, he's not going. There's going to be some stuff, some surprises. Borghi, we found out later in the week. The secondary was decimated too, Alex. Let's start there. They still did a heck of a job. Now, I don't think that quarterback's worth a darn, but they did a heck of a job, and they were missing some dudes last week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a considerable amount, right, of guys that were not there or didn't dress, and you saw Tyrese Ross wasn't in, who's a guy that you thought the safety position would play a major role. I actually thought Chad Davis Jr. was going to be one of the safeties that was started, and instead it was Aiden Hector, the true freshman from Eastside Catholic, who, as we know, was a top 100 recruit who ended up going to Stanford, and he had, his situation, ends up walking on at Washington State and getting an opportunity, and boy, did he take advantage. He was all over the field. I think
he led the team with 7 tackles, didn't he? I think he led the team with tackles.
I mean, he was phenomenal. But then even at the corner position, you saw George Hicks, who's a stalwart from last year, but we got to see little Jalen Watson, number 0, who's a junior college transfer, who was originally USC commit, didn't qualify to junior college, was working at Wendy's, and then ended up having the opportunity to come to Washington State. He is a Sunday NFL talent. I mean, he's 6'3", 190 pounds, and he locked down one side of the field. But, that's because we're missing Derek Langford, a couple other guys, Armani Archie. Like, those guys not there that have been in the program. To have the new faces step up, Brennan Jackson on the defensive line. I mean, those are 3 guys I named that there was a 2 deep that had guys from 2019 that could have played or had been on the roster that didn't play. So whether it was injuries or they got beat out or whatever, I'm just happy to see some new faces that made a ton of plays for Washington State.
Jed, jump in.
So one, talking about Coach Rolo's comment, it's his demeanor, his approach, his mindset, that nonchalant attitude is something that we've kind of grown to enjoy and appreciate. Mm-hmm. It is a different nonchalant feeling from Coach Leach. It is a little bit more of an aggressive nonchalant, which I like. But you're absolutely right. Like, in this sense, you are now speaking to a national media in this moment in time. You cannot be that ambiguous. oddly enough, my first reaction wasn't COVID with the 32. It was more disciplinary.
That was mine too. You know what?
Teams.
That was mine too. That was exactly mine as well. Exactly. Yes.
And you look at comments and thoughts and try to read between the lines, which you can never do. But yeah, that's where my thought process went. Was there are some dudes out. You can explain one or two of those through injury and banged up, even though it's November and we haven't been playing football. That doesn't make total sense. But that's where you got to be very precise on this moment in football, this moment in history. You can't leave anything up to being ambiguous. I was really missing out on Travion Brown. I was excited to see his growth. And that dude, and Mkristo can tell you defensively, he's got the makings for a Sunday type of caliber talent. So it was really neat to see. I really love Alex's call out about Watson, his gratitude about going from Wendy's to being on the field. Like, those are the college football stories. Wherever he goes in his career, he needs to get an education. But this kind of profile player, getting a second chance and taking full advantage of it, hopefully having his head on correct and seeing straight on the Palouse. Yeah. This entire team, it was really neat to see. And I felt like it was a meshing point for them from a culture, from a buy-in. Wins beget wins, and this first one was more pivotal than anything. Ian, you made the comment on the Oregon State quarterback. We can say that now. We were not saying that before kickoff.
Yeah, MK.
Yeah. And I'll say too, one of the most exciting things that I personally had this year was historically we've never had the opportunity to reach out and talk to any of the players or be a part of the program. I think Mike Leach kept a pretty big wall up. And first thing that happened when Rolo came was the position coach reached out to the players, and my mind was blown. AJ Cooper reached out and said, "Hey, MK, I love what you did with the Cougs. I want to know, do you need anything from us?" And I was just blown away. I was like, Coach, what I really want to know is what was our plan of attack this year on the defensive line? I'm so tired of seeing defense give up, 40, 50 points. So he said, "Hey, listen, we're going to attack the run. Our number one emphasis this offseason is to go after the run." And I talked to him before this last game, and he said the same thing. And you guys all saw, this wasn't a 40-point game again. Like, we're stopping the run, 3 and outs. When's the last time you saw 3 and out with Cougar defense? And I'm literally yelling at the screen. I'm doing Coug chomps at the screen. I'm like, 3rd down, no gain. I saw a no gain. I mean, I'm literally just blowing my mind. And a couple guys that I really, really am high on right now is Brendan Jackson and Ron Stone Jr. But Brendan's a sophomore. He had 3 solo tackles. He had 4 assists, and then he had a half a sack. But Ron Stone went out there and had a sack and a half. Like, when are we seeing these stats, besides, Hercules was out there, a few years back. But I'm starting to see a trend where we're getting after the quarterback again. And my mind was literally just so excited.
As the year goes on, we'll expand more on that because we're gonna run out of time here. But I like the connection that he is having with former players because I remember that is something that we heard with Leach that just kind of cut you guys off at the knees, some of you guys, and that's unreal. And then, boy, like Tyrone Willingham did that at Washington, and it had a ripple effect for years here in Seattle. I mean, and it turned in terms of attendance and everything else. The fact that Rolo and his staff are reaching out to guys like you because you all have something to give. I mean, and Mkristo's story is one of the best ones out there. I mean, look at this guy, and that's why I'm sure you see a kid that had a JC, was in JC and working at McDonald's. Man, you got to love that, MK. Seeing that kid, he appreciates the opportunity for the education and football. Stone's a guy we saw last year, Alex, a little bit. We saw glimpses of him. Brennan, a new kid. But Alex, let me start with you. Let's go around the horn. We got a few minutes left here. This is a whole different animal coming in here, the Ducks. I mean, the feathers are flying. We saw what Verdell did last season. He ran for 2 bills. New quarterback. They don't have Herbert, but they have a quarterback that looked pretty good. They looked very impressive against Stanford. Let's start with the offense against Wazoo's defense, Alex.
Yeah, some of last Saturday against Oregon State, we got to be very honest when we look at that film. I mean, Oregon State has taken a major step back under Jonathan Smith from what we had thought they were going to be, coming into this season. So I think it's fair that we put that lens on it also. So you look at the Oregon game, Jamar Jefferson from Oregon State is one of the best backs in the league. Early on, we were able to kind of slow him, but once he got his feet underneath him in the second quarter through the fourth quarter, he's averaging well over 6-7 yards a carry. So I think, looking at that defense for Washington State against an Oregon team offensively that wants to run the football, right? New coordinator under Joe Moorhead, a guy that's going to really try and utilize quarterback run. He's going to utilize the backs in a lot of different ways. they're going to be very multiple. So I think Washington State has to be really good with their eyes. So the linebackers can't get, you can't see flow one way and not be ready for quarterback run the other way, right? I think on the defensive line, we got to see that defensive line continue to penetrate and make plays at the line of scrimmage, not let things get downfield. You don't want Jahad Woods playing catch on CJ Verdell 5 yards down the field. So I look for that aggressiveness, right, that MK is talking about. Like to see that. What I loved about this Washington State defense from that Oregon State game, they did not sit back in zone and let people run to them. They played a lot of man coverage. They would put 6-7 guys on the line of scrimmage, show zero blitz, and drop out of it. There's a different type of mentality that I think pays dividends against a team like Oregon.
Jed, let me jump in with you. Let's go to the offensive side because we're running out of time. Just offensively, let's talk about McIntosh running downhill. This might be one of those games, and I thought Stanford ran the ball hard and well early on, and they kind of got away from that a little bit with against Oregon, and I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, I know David Shaw's the smartest guy on the planet, but he didn't look at it at times, but I mean, I think McIntosh, let's assume Borghe's out. McIntosh has to be a key, but give me your quick thoughts on the offense against that Oregon defense.
Getting your young quarterback in rhythm, I think a lot of those short passes that you saw on the third, fourth, fifth drive, the little 4 or 5 chunkers where you let guys in space create, and they're going to be able to do that this week. If you can get McIntosh another 15 carries, get him downhill, he seems aggressive enough. And as Alex pointed out, that offensive line is our strength, so we got to get those guys going. I will point out in the first quarter, I think we had 3 or 4 penalties. Drive killers cannot happen against a team like Oregon. They cleaned it up, only ended up with 5 penalties for the night, but a lot of those came in the first quarter. So kind of getting settled into that mindset. But yes, running behind the big fellas, keeping the ball control because Oregon is going to be able to hit and hit fast. So I also want to bring up a defensive lineman we have not mentioned in Crowder. He's a guy whose name got said a couple times and really started to jump off as saying, we need these big mamma jambas up front. Going into a game like Oregon, they can dominate the line of scrimmage and the time of possession. Those dudes are going to have to really bring their work pants this week. But yes, if we can get another 100-yard ball carrier, the Cougs offense will be producing the way it's supposed to.
MK, final word on keys to the game this week.
Finally, we got 4 hands in the ground. I was at that Oregon game last year, and we were just terrible stopping the run. And like Brink said, we stopped him up front, and then he just got his legs underneath him. I think we bring pressure, we bring blitzes often, and we put 4 hands in the dirt and get after him.
Guys, absolutely fantastic stuff. Big thanks to No Lie Brewing. You see the hat there. If you're on No Lie Brewing out of Spokane, right on the Spokane River. It's in the shadow of the Elson Floyd Medical School and Nursing School there right next to Gonzaga. But I like to call it, it's more in the shadow of Washington State over there in Spokane since we're taking over that town as well. Born and raised, big and juicy, some fine IPAs. You can find them in your local grocery stores over here on the west side of the state, made by John and Cindy Bryant. Cougs all the way through. It's a great Coug beer. No Lie Brewing. Jed, website again?
YourMotorVehicle.com.
MK?
TeamBruceMortgage.com.
And Alex, you just keep being a pretty quarterback, and we'll see you next week. How's that? And as we've learned, MK, we learned one thing: Alex compliments the quarterback. Jed brings the quarterback back down to earth. That's how this operates.
Standard issue.
And MK, you can pick a side if you want. I don't care which side you pick, but I'm going to tell you right now, you better pick a side because this is how it's going to be all year long. This kid, I'm thinking the kid's already an early front runner for the Heisman as a freshman, 4-time Pac-12 offense.
Roses? I'm smelling roses already, guys.
Yeah, I mean, has anybody ever been a 4-time Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year? I don't think so.
As long as he's a Husky killer, that's all we care about, right?
We got one down. We got one here that knows what that's all about. So maybe Alex can coach him up in that regard. Guys, great stuff. We'll talk to you next week. All right, go Cougs.
Appreciate you. Go Cougs.
Hey guys, go Cougs.